We begin with pre-romantic poetry. We begin with pre-romantic poetry. You see, the age of classicism was followed by the by the transitional period, and this pre-romantic period came about from 1770 to 1798. It lasted about 30 years of the 18th century. And there was new sensibility rising in the generation of poets who were there. They were experimental, they wanted to do new things, they wanted to try out new things. They became more and more subjective and incorporated autobiographical materials in their poetry. And the poetry was more lyrical, the poetry was more personal, and it was less intellectual and more emotional in presenting a variety of emotional states of the soul. So, a quick recap on the main themes of pre-romantic literature. Pre-romantic literature saw a distinct return to nature. They showed, the poets that is, they showed a distinct love for natural surroundings, the picturesque, and they showed a love for solitude, loneliness, and meditation. When we come to the poets one by one, you will see they were intently autobiographical in nature. And they loved to narrate their own experiences instead of borrowed experiences from here and there, or narrating the particular class of persons, and narrating trying to criticize, trying to set oneself strictly following certain norms. They tried to do away with all this. What they tried was, they tried to be lyrical, they tried to be more and more autobiographical in nature. Yes, there was, as I told you earlier, there was this return to nature, there was this cult of sensibility and melancholy, there was a cult of the primitive life, where the poets felt a more communication with nature, they loved the strange, the exotic and the sublime, and they showed particular interest in the Middle Age, and there was also distinct interest in Gothic architecture, and they tried to subject intellect to imagination. Now, coming to the present poem, Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard. What is an elegy? I put it in bullets so that it's easier for you but you have to know the definition of an elegy. An elegy is a poem written on the death of a friend or a relative. A conventional elegy has the friend mourning the death of another friend in the form of a shepherd. The dead is also presented as a shepherd. So, what is an elegy? It is a poem of mourning. Why is it a poem of mourning? It mourns the death of a friend or a relative. The poet mourns the death of a friend or a relative as a shepherd, and the friend is also presented as a shepherd. The subject matter of elegy is solemn and meditative. That is quite understandable. You see, you cannot have something very light and humorous in a poem which depicts solemn surroundings and solemn state of mind, and the poet is distinctly meditative. Best examples of the conventional elegy are Milton's Lycidas, Shelley's Adonis, and Tennyson's In Memoriam. Gray's elegy, which we'll take up now, is an unconventional one. Why? Because it mourns the death of the ordinary people and simple people who have found no fame in life. Got it? See, I'm going to come up to the text now. So we'll take up the text, the paraphrase, and then we'll move on to something more serious. So what is the main message of the elegy in the country churchyard? The main theme of the elegy written in a country churchyard is the inevitability of death. I repeat, the main theme of elegy written in a country churchyard is the inevitability of death. What is the setting of the poem? Elegy written in a country churchyard. Gray's elegy written in a country churchyard takes place in a country churchyard, that is a graveyard. And graveyard where a remote village graveyard. And that means that it was written among all the gravestones of the dead members of that church. It's shaded by elm and yew trees, and there's an owl hooting in the background. This is something about the background of the poem which I am giving, and we'll take up explanation line by line. A bit of history too. Elegy written in a country churchyard is one of the best known elegies in the language. It exhibits the gentle melancholy that is characteristic of the English poets of the graveyard school of the 1740s and 50s. It is a meditation on unused human potential, the conditions of country life and mortality. That is, it contemplates on death. The poem contains some of the best known lines of English literature, notably, you must have heard it before, full many a flower is born to blush unseen. I'll tell you where it is and what's the next line. In fact, the whole stanza is beautiful, and there's another beautiful line, far from the madding crowd's ignoble strife. So, this far from the madding crowd has been taken as the title for one of Thomas Hardy's poems, novel also. The elegy opens with the narrator musing in a graveyard at the close of the day. He speculates about the obscure lives of the villagers who lie buried and suggests that they may have been full of rich promise that was ultimately stunted by the poverty or ignorance. The churchyard in the poem is believed to be that of Stoke Poges, Buckinghamshire, which Gray visited often and where he now lies buried. So the last part, the last section is very autobiographical and it describes Gray's death, right? So now I begin line by line explanation. I'll read a few lines in the beginning. The curfew tolls the knell of the parting day. The lowing herd winds slowly over the lea. The ploughman homeward plods his weary way and leaves the world to darkness and to me. Now fades the glimmering landscape on the sides, and all the air a solemn stillness holds, save where the beetle wheels his droning flight and drowsy tinklings lull the distant folds. Save that from yonder ivy-mantled tower, the moping owl does to the moon complain of such as wandering near her secret bower molest her ancient solitary reign. Look at the first lines. The curfew tolls the knell of the parting day. Knell is sound. And curfew is the church bell. The church bells ring, signaling the parting day. That is, the time is about sunset. Okay? हमारे यहाँ भी जब दिए का टाइम होता है, मंदिरों की घंटी की आवाज सुनाई देती है आरती की. The lowing herd winds slowly over the lea. The herdsmen, they all come back from their pastures. Lea is the word for pastures. The ploughman homewards plods his weary way. The ploughman, okay, he comes back, farmer comes back home, and he has worked in the fields all day long, so he is tired. So, Gray does not say that the ploughman is tired. He says that the way is tired. The ploughman homewards plods his weary way. He comes back home and leaves the world to darkness and to me. So, the poet remains there near the churchyard or the graveyard. He observes these activities. People are all returning back home. And he sets to describe the evening in more detail. Now fades the glimmering landscape on the sight, and all the air a solemn stillness holds. The landscape is glimmering. Sham ho rahi na, टिमटिमाती हुई. And there is stillness all around. Shanti. सब और शांति ही शांति है. Exceptions भी हैं. Save where the beetle wheels his droning flight and drowsy tinklings lull the distant folds. Which are the exceptions? Beetles drone. As evening draws closer, the sound of the beetles can be heard. And drowsy tinklings lull the distant folds. The church bells ringing one after another make an echo sound so that you can hear several bells one after the other. Say that, there are more exceptions. Say that from yonder ivy-mantled tower, moping owl does to the moon complain. There is that ivy-mantled tower. Mantled means decorated. The tower is decorated with the ivy leaves, and there is an owl there. And the owl seems to be complaining to the moon. Okay? What is the complaint? Of such as wandering near the secret bower molest her ancient solitary reign. The owl complains to the moon that the moonlight which is falling on the nest, and you know that the owl loves darkness. So the owl does not want that kind of darkness and seems to complain to the moon that the moon is molesting, the moon is destroying her solitary reign, her lonely rule. Got it? Look for the words, read it again, read for comprehension, you check on the words, explanation will become all the more easy. Beneath those rugged elms that yew trees shade, where heaps the turf in many a mouldering heap, each in his narrow cell forever laid, the rude forefathers of the hamlet sleep. There are elm trees and there are yew trees in the graveyard. And see how Gray describes the graveyard, where heaves the turf in many a mouldering heap. हीव है सांस लेती है जो टर्फ है द ग्राउंड है it seems to be breathing, so it's coming up and in form of a mouldering heap, in form of a mold. Each in his narrow cell the forever laid, the rude forefathers of the hamlet sleep. Hamlet क्या है? छोटी सी धानी, छोटी सी जगह जो वहाँ की है, वो it's not even a village, it's even smaller part of a village. So the forefathers of the hamlet are lying there buried forever. The breezy call of the incense breathing morn, the swallow twittering from the straw-built shed, the cock's shrill clarion or the echoing horn, no more shall rouse them from their lowly bed. Now Gray brings in those lovely images from nature, and see, they are all those quiet images and soothing images. So what does he begin with? He begins with morning. He says there is a breezy call of the incense breathing morning. There is some fragrance. सुबह की हवा में खुशबू होती है. Morn is the short form for morning. The swallow twittering from the straw-built shed. Swallows जो हैं वो चिड़ियों की चहचहाट. Swallows which twitter more during morning and evening too. The cock's shrill clarion or the echoing horn. Cock की तीखी सी आवाज and horn की आवाज, jingle. No more shall rouse them from their lowly bed. ये ऐसी आवाजें हैं जो इन्हें नहीं उठा सकती हैं. Why can't they get up? Because they are lying dead and buried there. For them no more the blazing earth shall burn, or busy housewife ply her evening care. No children run to list their sire's return, or climb his knees the envied kiss to share. See, again the poet brings images from the household of these rustic people, the common people, ordinary people, and beautifully describes in detail. He says there will be no earth, there will be no fireplace for them, giving them place when they return home. Why? Because they don't need it. They are all dead. Or busy housewife ply her evening care. No housewife will wait for these people, for the husbands to return home. No children run to list their sire's return, or climb his knees the envied kiss to share. The children will also not wait for the sire, the father. So that what happens when you have many children in the house, when the father comes from somewhere else, the children rush to get to the father's arms first. Okay, there is always this race, and whoever wins the race feels very happy that day that the father loves him most. Okay, yes. Oft did the harvest to the sickle yield, their furrow of the stubborn glebe has broke. How jocund did they drive their team afield, how bode the woods beneath their sturdy stroke. How oft is short form for often. Their harvest has yielded to their sickle. सिकल हंसली है, उन्होंने कितनी बार उससे अपनी हार्वेस्ट काटी है और फरो कितनी बार चलाया है. Their furrow of the glebe has broke, कितनी बार उन्होंने अपने खेतों में हल चलाकर उसे पार्टीशंस में डाला, फसल उगानी है ना, इसके लिए. How jocund did they drive their team afield. Look at this imagery. As soon as they are ready to go to their fields, they don't go alone. They always call each other and they go, they make it a point to go to the fields together and even come back together. How both the woods beneath their sturdy stroke. Sometimes they have to cut wood for their fireplace, wood for other things. So they have cut wood and the woods have bent in respect before them, even though they've been striking them. Got it? So why does Gray describe these events? Gray wants to describe the ordinary events of these simple folk of the particular hamlet. And these are ordinary farming activities which are described in this stanza, where they go in company to their fields and they work all day and they reap their harvests and they use their furrows and they come back also happily, and sometimes when they cut woods they also do that very efficiently. Let not ambition mock their useful toil, their homely joys and destiny obscure, nor grandeur hear with a disdainful smile the short and simple annals of the poor. There is a lot of personification here. When the poet says, let not ambition mock their useful toil, he says ambition, महत्वाकांक्षा. महत्वाकांक्षा को मजाक मत बनाने दो. टॉयल यानी लेबर, उनकी मेहनत को. So let not an ambition make fun of their simple labor. Their joys were homely and their destiny was obscure, unclear. Destiny, future, bhavishya. Not grandeur here with a disdainful smile, the short and simple annals of the poor. Grandeur, grand होता है ना सब कुछ, जहाँ pomp है, शो है, सब कुछ ग्रैंड है. थोड़ा भी करते हैं तो बहुत बड़ा दिखावा करते हैं. So the poet says, let not grandeur bring about a disdainful smile, hateful smile over the short and simple annals of the poor, the short and simple work culture of the poor people. The next lines are the most important lines of this poem and perhaps the most meaningful too. Okay? So you have to be more careful while reading these lines. The boast of heraldry, the pomp of power, and all that beauty and wealth ever gave, awaits alike the inevitable hour. The paths of glory lead but to the grave. The boast of heraldry. Heraldry, bravery. Bahaduri ka garv. Boast of heraldry. The pomp of power. Takat he का शो, pomp of power, and all that beauty and wealth ever gave, and खूबसूरती और धन से जो भी प्राप्त हो सकता है, awaits like the inevitable hour. सब कुछ, जीवन में सब कुछ पाने वाला भी उस एक घड़ी का वेट करता है. The paths of glory lead but to the grave. ये जो सारे यश के पथ हैं, ये सब कहाँ लेके जाते हैं? ग्रेव की. अंत में वही चर्चा, या जैसे भी आपकी मुक्ति होनी है वही होकर है. Nor you ye proud impute to these the fault, if memory over their tomb no trophies raise, where through the long drawn aisle and fretted vault the pealing anthem swells the note of praise. Nor you, आप, ye proud impute to these faults, जिसने कभी ध्यान नहीं दिया इन चीजों का. If memory over their tomb no trophies raise, ये तो एक हैमलेट का छोटा सा चर्चयार्ड है, तो उनके ग्रेव्स पर कुछ ज्यादा लिखा हुआ भी नहीं है. सो व्हाट हैपेंस, वो नहीं, उनमें अगर कोई ट्रॉफीज नहीं है, where through the long drawn aisle and fretted vault the pealing anthem swells the note of praise. वो समाज के किसी भी तबके का व्यक्ति हो, चर्चयार्ड को जब डेथ के बाद ले जाया जाता है तो वही प्रक्रिया होती है, वही प्रोसेस होती है. तो पीलिंग एंथम जो है वो प्रेज के दो शब्द मांगते हैं. Then there is a philosophical statement in the next stanza by the poet. He says, can storied urn or animated bust back to expansion call the fleeting breath? Can honor's voice provoke the silent dust? Can flattery soothe the dull cold ear of death? Look at the questions. क्या हम स्टोरीड अर्न, अस्थि कलश रखते हैं, या वो एनिमेटेड बस्ट, मसाला भर के हाफ ऑफ द बॉडी को रखते हैं? क्या ये सब करने से वापस से जो निकली हुए प्राण है वो वापस आ जाएंगे? Will the breath come back? No. Can honor's voice provoke the silent dust? You see, even those who are enemies during lifetime, if one of the person dies, the other generally uses words of praise. Or flattery soothes the dull cold ear of death, and Lord flattery is also used. Perhaps now, in the next few stanzas, the poet will contemplate upon what these people could have been had they got some opportunity in life. Perhaps in this neglected spot is laid some heart once pregnant with celestial fire, hands that the rod of the empire might have swayed, or wake to ecstasy the living lyre. कदाचित इस neglected spot में, इस जगह पर कोई ऐसा व्यक्ति होगा जिसमें भी जो बहुत अच्छा म्यूजिशियन होता और सेलेस्टियल फायर, हेवनली आग होती उसमें, और उसमें ऐसे कुछ करने की क्षमता होती जिसको कि उनको महान लोगों में कैटेगराइज किया जाता. Hands that the rod of the empire might have swayed. इनमें से कोई राजा हो सकता था, कोई सम्राट हो सकता था. और wake to ecstasy the living lyre, या तो फिर बहुत ही अच्छा म्यूजिशियन, जाना माना म्यूजिशियन भी हो सकता. But that did happen. Remember, हर स्टैंजा में एक ही बात आएगी, but that didn't happen. Otherwise the poet wouldn't have been writing about these people. But knowledge to their eyes her ample page, rich with the spoils of time, did never unroll. Chill penury repressed their noble rage, and froze the genial current of the soul. Knowledge ने अपना पेज नहीं खोला उनके सामने. समय के साथ, रिच विद द स्पॉइल्स ऑफ टाइम, समय के साथ कभी नहीं भूला. चिल पेन्यूरी, पश्चाताप, प्रायश्चित ने उनको हमेशा एक सिस्टम में बांध के रखा, जिससे कि उन्होंने जीवन में ज्यादा की चाह नहीं की. अब again memorable lines of the poem. Full many a gem of purest ray serene, the dark unfathomed caves of the ocean bare, full many a flower is born to blush unseen, and waste its sweetness in the desert air. जैसे कि serene rays, प्योर से प्योर जेम्स जो हैं, वो ओशन के डार्क अनफैथम्ड अनइमेजिन्ड केव्स में होते हैं. ओशन में ही नहीं, ओशन के डीप केव्स. देयर आर सेवरल जेम्स व्हिच कैन बी फाउंड इन द डार्क unfathomed caves of the ocean. Similarly, there are many flowers which are born to blush unseen. Can you always travel to the desert to have a look at the flowers there? No. Does that mean that there are no flowers in the desert? Yes, there is some kind of vegetation, there are some flowers, but these flowers are born to blush unseen. Why? Because nobody reaches them, nobody is there to pick them and waste its sweetness in the desert air. The poet compares these people, these simple people, to the gems of the ocean and to the flowers of the desert. The gems of the ocean cannot be seen, though they are very precious gems. Similarly, the flowers which bloom in the desert cannot be seen by the people. Why? Because they do not frequent the deserts. So these people were like these gems and flowers. Some village Hampton that with dauntless breast the little tyrant of his fields withstood. Some mute and glorious Milton here may rest, some Cromwell guiltless of his country's blood. कोई इनमें से हैम्पटन हो सकता था. कौन? हमारे कुछ लगान फिल्म के भुवन के किरदार जैसा किरदार, जो कि द लिटिल टायरेंट ऑफ हिज फील्ड्स विथस्टूड, जिसने कि कर देने के लिए ना देने के लिए अपने साथियों को संगठित किया और डिक्टेटर के अगेंस्ट, टायरेंट के अगेंस्ट आवाज उठाई. Some mute and glorious Milton here may rest, some Cromwell guiltless of his country's blood. इनमें से कोई म्यूट इनग्लोरियस मिल्टन, मिल्टन तो बहुत प्रसिद्ध पोएट हुए ना, तो इनमें से कोई मिल्टन जैसा प्रसिद्ध पोएट हो सकता था, इफ ही हैड गॉट अपॉर्चुनिटी इन लाइफ. या इनमें से कोई क्रॉमवेल भी हो सकता था, जो कि गिल्टलेस था अपने कंट्री मैन के ब्लडशेड. उसको कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ा कितने लोगों को उसने मारा मरवाया. राइट? बट क्या ये लोग ऐसे हुए? These people were not like these, like from. The applause of listening senates to command, the threats of pain and ruin to despise, to scatter plenty over a smiling land and read the history in a nation's eye. कोई इनमें से सेनेट्स को यानी सेनेटर्स को कौन सुनता है? पार्लियामेंटेरियंस. पार्लियामेंटेरियंस को कौन सुनता है? पार्लियामेंटेरियंस. द थ्रेड्स ऑफ पेन एंड गोइंग टू डिस्पाइज. और पार्लियामेंट में क्या होता है? डिसीजन. आज क्या हो रहा है, आज क्या नहीं है, आज क्या अच्छा है, आज क्या ठीक करने के लिए और क्या क्या करना पड़ेगा. To scatter plenty over a smiling land. या तो कोई इस देश को ध्यान पूर्वक देखता, उसकी हर गतिविधि को परखता, जिससे कि उसकी हिस्ट्री को समझ सकता था. तो somebody could have been a historian. Their lot forbade nor circumscribed alone, their growing virtues, but their crimes confined. Forbade to wade through slaughter to a throne, and shut the gates of mankind on man. इनकी किस्मत ने क्या तय किया था? It was destined that their virtues would grow, but their crimes will also be confined. उनकी अच्छाइयां बढ़ेंगी, पर उनकी बुराइयां कम से कम रहेंगी. उन्होंने ऐसा कोई गलत तरीका नहीं अपनाया कि स्लॉटर मचा के, मारकाट मचा के थ्रोन तक पहुंचे, यानी सिंहासन तक पहुंचे. एंड शट द गेट्स ऑफ mercy on mankind. Itna, they did not do anything to shut the gates of mercy on mankind. They loved people around them, they thought about them, and they did not do anything that would be against the norms of being merciful and kind. The struggling pangs of conscious truth to hide, to quench the blushes of ingenious shame, or heat the shrine of luxury and pride with incense kindled at the muse's flame. उन्होंने कोई, उनके कॉन्शियंस में कोई इस तरह की स्ट्रगल नहीं हुई जिससे कि उन्हें ट्रूथ छुपानी पड़े, या शेमफुल एक्ट उन्होंने किया और उसके लिए ब्लश नहीं करना पड़ा, या उन्होंने लग्जरी और प्राइड की श्राइन को, के टेम्पल को नहीं कैंडल जलाया उसमें, यानी वो लग्जरी और प्राइड से, गर्व से बहुत दूर रहे. Now comes that line which I quoted before starting the poem. Far from the madding crowd's ignoble strife, their sober wishes never learned to stray. Along the cool sequestered way of life, they kept the noiseless tenors of their way. वो कहाँ थे? Far from the madding crowd. See, जैसे very way था ना word, ऐसे ही madding crowd. पागल होती भीड़, पागल होती भीड़ की रोजमर्रा की इग्नोबल, जो कि नोबल नहीं है, ऐसे स्ट्राइक, ऐसे वरीज से दूर उनके जो विशेष थे, उनकी चाहते थे, वो कभी नहीं स्ट्रे हुई, कभी नहीं भटकी. They lived along the cool sequestered way of life. शांति से जीते रहे. And kept the noiseless tenor of their way. और उन्होंने अपने जीवन को बहुत शांति से जिया. Yet, even these bones from insult to protect, some frail memorial still erected nigh, with uncouth rhymes and shapeless sculpture decked, implores the passing tribute of a sigh. फिर भी, the poet again makes a change in the mood. He becomes all the more contemplative. He says, फिर भी इन bones को protect करने के लिए, there is a frail memorial erected somewhere or the other, and there are uncouth rhymes and shapeless structures also. Then, all this begs for the tribute of a sigh. जो वहां से होकर निकले, कम से कम उनके सम्मान में एक आहत हो गए, कम से कम उन्हें एक क्षण के लिए याद तो करे. For who to dumb forgetfulness a prey, sorry, their names, their letters felt by their unlettered muse, the place of fame and elegy supply, and many a holy text around she strews that teach the rustic moralist to die. उस ग्रेवयार्ड को फर्दर डिस्क्राइब करते हुए द पोएट सेज, बहुत से ग्रेव्स में उनके नेम्स, ईयर्स, एंड जो ज्यादा जानने वाला पोएट नहीं है उसने लिखा, ज्यादा फेम और एलिजी ना लिखकर छोटे से वर्ड्स या फ्रेजेस में लिखा, और बाइबल में से कुछ लाइंस इधर उधर दिया, जिससे कि वो जो विलेजर्स हैं वो कैसे जीना चाहिए, कैसे मरना चाहिए, उसका पाठ पढ़ते हैं. For who, to dumb forgetfulness a prey, this pleasing anxious being ere resigned, left the warm precincts of the cheerful day, nor cast one longing lingering look behind. Poet again becomes more meditative. He says, जिसके लिए डम फॉरगेटफुलनेस के जो शिकार हुए हैं, और पोएट अपने आप को वहां रखता है कि जो दिन निकला है, क्या एक बार उसका कर्तव्य नहीं है कि वो पीछे मुड़कर देखें, उनको ध्यान करें, उनकी याद में, उनके सम्मान में. On some fond breast the parting soul relies. Some pious drops the closing eye requires. Even from the tomb the voice of nature cries, even in our ashes lit the wanton fires. हर व्यक्ति किसी न किसी सोल पर निर्भर है. मरता व्यक्ति चाहता है हमेशा कि वो घिरा रहे, कई लोग उसके आसपास रहें, और कुछ उसकी याद में दो आंसू बहाए. Even from the tomb the voice of nature cries. tomb में से भी वो आवाज आती है कि कोई उन्हें थोड़ा सी याद करे. Even in our ashes lit their wanton fires. Ashes में, डेथ के बाद भी एक चाह होती है कि कोई उन्हें याद करे. Now the poet becomes almost autobiographical. He now says, what about himself? What if he dies in an unknown place like this? He has been traveling alone. Most of these poets, the precursors, the romantic poets, they loved traveling. And they traveled alone. So definitely anything can happen. So while they are traveling alone, they might die and they might be buried there, because it's hard to locate the relatives and send the body. So maybe he might die and he might be buried there. But then he also wants someone to come looking after him. For thee, who mindful of the honoured dead, dost in these lines their artless tale narrate, if chance by lonely contemplation led, some kindred spirit shall inquire thy fate. The poet talks about himself. He says, for he himself who has been somewhat mindful of the unhonoured dead, of these simple folk, and is relating their artless tale. Gray calls it artless. You see, when the author calls it an artless tale, it is more artistic. It's not that artless. If by chance, this is being experimental, being humble. His modesty failed, and he came out with beautiful poems. If chance by lonely contemplation led, some kindred spirit is a friend, would come inquiring about his fate. Who will he meet? He will meet a happy, hoary-headed swain, that is, a loafer kind of a person, a village person. Happily some hoary-headed swain may say. Now this part is in inverted commas. That is, Gray has tried to put these words spoken by the hoary-headed friend, by the villager. Oft have we seen him at the peep of dawn, brushing with hasty steps the dews away, to meet the sun upon the upland lawn. See, now nature, again, morning, noon, evening, you see, every aspect of nature described precisely and beautifully. He says that this person could be seen at the peep of dawn, very early in the morning, brushing with hasty steps the dews away. There's dewdrops in the morning, so he would walk fast to meet the sun upon the upland lawn. He would climb a hill to meet the sun. That means at sunrise he will be going up the hill. There at the foot of yonder nodding beech, that reaches its old fantastic roots so high, his listless length at noontide would he stretch, and pour upon the brook that babbles by. There at the foot of the yonder nodding beech, there's a huge tree there. He shows that tree and tells the friend that, see, this is that huge tree and the roots are so high. This person, the poet in question, would be visible during during the afternoons. He would lie there and he would pour upon, his eyes would pour upon the brook, the stream that went past that tree, that huge tree. Then evening. Hard by yon wood now, smiling as in scorn, muttering his wayward fancies as he would rove, now drooping, woeful wan, like one forlorn, or crazed with care, or crossed in hopeless love. So he would say, see, by evening, you could spot him going into the woods. Sometimes he would be talking to himself, muttering his wayward fancies. He had some imagination, so he would be talking most of the time to himself. Sometimes he would bend, and sometimes he would look very sad, and sometimes forlorn, or sometimes crazy, and sometimes in hopeless love. He didn't know because he was a lonely fellow, so he didn't talk to anyone. So nobody could make out what was wrong with him. The villager's lines continue. One morn I missed him on the accustomed hill, along the heath and near his favourite tree. Another came, nor yet beside the rill, nor up the lawn, nor at the wood was he. He says, suddenly I began to miss him. I did not see him climbing up the hill in the morning or lying there pouring upon the brook in the afternoon. And then another day came, I could not spot him going up, going into the woods also. The next, with dirges due in sad array, slow through the churchway path we saw him borne. Approach and read, dark and street, the lay graved on the stone beneath yon aged thorn. See, the next day I saw him being carried to the churchyard. We saw him borne there, and come, you can read. Of course, we cannot read, you can read. So what is written on the tombstone of your friend? So this is the epitaph offered by Gray, and it is said that the epitaph was meant for his own grave. Here rests his head upon the lap of earth, youth to fortune and fame unknown, fair signs frown not on his humble birth, and melancholy marked him for her own. See, here there is this person lying on the lap of the earth, who was unknown. He was young, but unknown to fortune and fame. He wasn't fortunate, he wasn't famous. And fair signs did not make fun of his humble birth, but melancholy took him for her as her son. Melancholy marked him for her own. So he was given into grief and melancholy all his life. Large was his bounty and his soul sincere. He was an honest person. He was kind. He was generous. Heaven did a recompense as largely sent. Heaven ने उससे एक सौदा किया. क्या सौदा? He gave to misery all he had, that is, a tear. He gained from heaven was all he wished, a friend. उसने मिजरी को ऑल जो उसके पास था, बहुत धनवान नहीं था, उसने अपने आंसू दिए, लेकिन एक सौदे के रूप में हेवन से एक फ्रेंड की चाह की. कैसे फ्रेंड की? जो उसके डेथ के बाद उसके बारे में पता करे, उसके बारे में जाने. No further seek his merits to disclose, or draw his frailties from their dead abode. They are alike in trembling hope repose, the bosom of his Father and God. The poet ends with beautiful lines saying, there is no need to disclose the merits or draw the frailties. After death, there is no use discussing somebody's merits and demerits, because they become one. They repose all with one, with that ultimate Father, bosom of the Father and God, Father, Son and Holy Spirit. That is, ultimately they rest with God. Got it? Poet begins with a description, a beautiful description of the countryside, of the churchyard. He describes the people, the forefathers of that hamlet who are lying buried there, and what kind of life they led, what they were, and then he goes on to ponder as to what they could have been had they got some opportunity in life. They could have been very ambitious, they could have been great people, but they lived very simple lives. And then he says, even though he wishes to give a tribute to them, and he is mindful of them, and he wants to narrate the tale, and maybe something like that would happen to him also. When this happens, when he dies, somebody should come inquiring about him, and when they come to know the details, they should be led to the grave, to the epitaph, which reads as, one should not, it's good to have a friend, and one should not talk about the merits and demerits of a person. Why? Because they become one and rest with God after one dies. This is the explanation of the poem. We'll go into more details in the next class.